Hey, crew. Welcome back. Thank you guys for taking the time out to view our Unit 2 preview. I really have missed you guys. I hope that your school year is off to a running start. I'm sure that you guys are super busy. I know that I am, and I'm sure that you guys are working hard. My fifth graders are keeping me busy, but the great thing is that science is in full bloom in fifth grade. Hashtag workflow. They look like this. I look like this. All right, let's get started. What's on the agenda for today, you ask? Sure. We'll start by taking a look at the scope and sequence for Unit 2. We'll take a look at the unit at a glance. I will share some changes that I made to our Unit 2 assessment and some STEM Scopes resources that I think will be pretty beneficial for you guys when you're working on processing standards. As usual, my presentation will not be long because I know that you guys are really busy. So I'm not going to hold you long, but it is going to be a lot of information. Let's go. Scope and sequence. So I'm sure that you guys remember how to locate your scope and sequence on Blackboard. Just in case, it's on the fourth grade homepage on the left-hand side underneath the tab Scope and Sequence. So it's one full document for the entire school year. So if you scroll down to page 10, that's where you'll find the scope and sequence for Unit 2. Unit 2 will be covering a total of 7 TEKs. 2 of these TEKs are going to be readiness standards, and the other ones are going to be either supporting standards or process standards. As always, we have the vocabulary that will need to be covered throughout Unit 2 and the progression of your readiness TEKs. So it tells us what our TEKs looked like in 3rd grade and what they'll look like in the 5th grade. Okay? Unit 2 at a glance. So let's take a look. As you can see, I've listed my suggested pacing, my TEKs, the objectives, possible misconceptions, and formal and informal assessments to check for understanding. Nothing about this part has really changed. You can also I just want to make sure I tell you guys, you can find this full document on Blackboard. It'll be under the Unit 2 tab, Unit at a Glance. A couple of changes that I made was I tried to be very purposeful when planning for the processing standards this go round. So what I did was I linked every processing standard to a readiness standard that it could be taught in conjunction with. And I also gave you some strategies and some methods that you can incorporate these process standards into your lessons like seamlessly, like somewhere where they naturally fit genuinely. So I put for this processing standard 4.2c, construct simple tables, charts, bar graphs, maps, using tools and current technology to organize, examine, and evaluate data. I only put that this should take 1 day, and that is because I wanted to spiral it in during the soil investigation, which should only take 1 or 2 days. Processing standards should never be taught in isolation. These are things that should be taught in conjunction with a readiness TEK. So I only put 1 day because it's something that we'll cover all school year long. So there'll be plenty of opportunities for scholars to practice. So there's the day, there's the TEK, and here's the strategy for implementing it. I suggest that during your soil investigation that you have your scholars create their own table to record their information on. So instead of using the data table that is in your STEM Scopes journals, or in place of you guys making them a chart and putting it on the board and letting them copy it down, challenge scholars to really think about the data that's going to be collected and let them formulate a table or grid where all of that information will be able to be recorded and kept. Once your data has been collected, demonstrate to scholars how to take the data that they collected and change that data into a graph. The end result that I'm really looking for is that your scholars will be able to use the data from the investigation, which will be the amount of water each type of soil retained, and use that information to create a bar graph. Cool. You'll see here I also did the same thing with collect and record data by observing and measuring using the metric system. This skill almost kind of implements itself without really trying hard. Just allow your scholars to do their own measurements when they're measuring out materials for the investigation. Model how to take a measurement, especially like with graduated cylinders. That's a good place to start. You want to make sure that you remind scholars to get eye level so that they're getting proper measurements. Allow them to take ownership for it and the rest of the investigation. You also want to encourage them to use specific and descriptive words when making their observations. All right, so our Unit 2 assessment. One thing that you'll probably notice this time around is that the format of our Unit 2 assessment has changed a little. You'll probably see that it reads more like a formal assessment than our Unit 1 assessment did. So this was an intentional decision that I made. This was due in part to the fact that I wanted for our scholars to have more practice with STAR formatted questions, and to make sure that they're ready and that 5th grade Science STAR will not be a shocker to them. And I also added an assessment tracker. This is something that I included to help make the grading and analysis process run a little smoother for you and hopefully a little quicker, because we know time is not a luxury that any good teacher has. All right. So I uploaded about 12 or 13 new resources to Blackboard. I can't remember the exact amount. I want to say that they're all pretty much self-explanatory, but there's one that I kind of wanted to go over. So this document is saved as Slow Changes to Earth's Surface Practice. And what the scholars are asked to do is to choose one activity from each shape group. The way that I've utilized it in the past is that I make it a homework assignment for the week. I give it to scholars on a Monday, and I take it up from them on Friday. And they have that whole week to work at their leisure or pace themselves. And as long as they complete one activity from each shape group, they'll do great. It'll be fine. All right, so on to these STEM Scopes resources that I mentioned earlier. In our office hours, hint, hint, wink, wink. For those of you that missed it, you missed a great time. Darby had a really good question about other strategies and other methods that you guys could use when trying to implement processing standards, because they are going to be heavily tested on CA1. So in addition to the strategies that I put in the unit at a glance, I wanted you guys to see where STEM Scopes had some things that we could utilize. So if you hover over this Grades tab, there'll be a drop-down menu. At the very bottom, it says Teacher Toolbox K through 5. So if you click on that, this is what populates this little screen right here. So click on Teacher Toolbox K through 5. Once you do that, you'll see this here. So if you click on the Process Skills tab right here, it literally has every grade level, K through 5. So you basically just click on 4th grade, and it gives you a list of processing standards and strategies that you could use to implement them with your class. So I just thought that it would be a great tool, a great resource if your scholars were in need of some extra practice. Office hours. Man, shout out to everyone that took some time out of their busy schedules to attend our first session of office hours. You guys are the real MVPs. I hope that you all found it useful and beneficial and informative and not too long and not too draining, and that you also choose to attend our next session of office hours. So I will always send out the calendar invite the week before, and I'll send out the Skype link the day before. You don't want to miss it. It's going to be great. All right. As always, I don't want you guys to suffer in silence. A couple of people reach out, and I try to help them as soon as I possibly can. So if you guys need anything, you know my email address. Feel free to reach out to me at any time. Thank you so much. I just want you guys to know that I appreciate each and every one of you and the work that you do for our scholars. As always, I am at your service. All right, thank you. Have a great rest of the week, and I'll talk to you guys soon.